And in fact, Mozart didn't really want to be a piano player. What he really wanted to do was to compose music, and he told this to his father, but his father told him that he was crazy, that he was doing very, very well as a piano player, and that he should pursue that and become even better, and that he should forget about composing operas, which is what Mozart really wanted to do, compose operas. So he was kind of in the same situation as, well, not the same, but in a similar situation as Miosen. And what Mozart did, of course, was to blew off his father, and one day he decided to go to Vienna and stop playing for chords, stop playing the piano, stop being, at the moment, a piano player, and dedicate himself completely to composing operas. And that's when he he started really to thrive and become the person we all know today. At least this is what this book says. Maybe if Mozart had listened to his father, he would have never, we wouldn't even know who he was. The other example, I give you two to show you that this is not only about art and stuff like that, but it can apply to everything. The other one is Darwin. Darwin, one of the greatest biologists of time. When he was young, he was always very interested in kind of the life that surrounded him. He used to love to collect bugs and stuff like that and analyze them. He was crazy about it. And his father was a very, very wealthy and good positioned doctor, physician. So what he wanted for his beloved son was also a life of good social position and, well, everything he had. So, but Darwin was never too good at school and stuff like that, so he thought he would never have an opportunity. So what he did is secure his son a position in the church, and it was not easy because Darwin he wasn't really good at anything, apparently. So in his father's eyes, he was doing him a big favor. But one day, an old teacher from school sent a letter to Darwin telling him to come on a journey in a kind of exploration ship that was about to leave port and go to South America on an exploration mission, and that they needed a naturalist, like someone that would collect specimens when they went on land, and collect them and take them on the ship to send back to England and have them examined by scientists. This professor offered him because he knew that his love of his curiosity for all this stuff, so he told him. And at first Darwin said no, because his father had already secured this position for him. He didn't want to disappoint him, and he was really not, it was okay. I mean, all he needed for his hobby, that it was this all the time, a hobby, was a garden or some piece of land, and he didn't really need to go on this trip. But then a few days went by, and he realized he did actually need to go on this trip. He had this need to this feeling that he needed to go to South America and see what was there. Because this was his way, this need for learning about biology. So he went against his father and went to on this ship for 5 years. And if Darwin hadn't do that, he would never have come up with the theory of evolution, or maybe he had, he would have, I don't know. But this was what kind of started the whole process. He went to Brazil and then to the Galapagos Islands and discovered that this hobby and this like for wild specimens was actually much more than he thought. So yes, and not only those two people, but history is full of this kind of stories. And I'm saying this because I think the way and this practice and enlightenment and all of these things can be found with other names in other areas, and it's not only something proper to Zen Buddhism to look for this kind of search. I don't know the words for this, but anyways. Now, lastly, I want to tell you another story that for me is also about mastery, but it's not in this book, of course. All of you, well, most of you know that my mom was a dancer, and she started out pretty much the same. She found this need to dance when she was very, very small child. And she always was really, really good at it, and she loved it very, very much. So much that she had a very... she was starting to be very successful at a very early age. And she ended up in Europe, in London, dancing with one of the best companies, contemporary dance companies in the world, and as a first dancer and soloist. And she was touring all over Europe and having a very, very good career, as you might call it. This was only because she was doing what she loves. But anyway, she was being very, very successful. And then at some point, in kind of the peak of this, she decided to go to Mexico for a little while, because she could feel that she was about to decide to stay longer abroad, so she wanted to talk to her friends and her family. So she went back to Mexico for a little while to dance with a Mexican company. But in the meantime, when she was here, she received a call from an even better dance company begging her to come back and to go on a tour to Italy with them. But when she was in Mexico, she told them, yes, okay, so I will go back, and dance with you. But she still had like 3 months in Mexico or something like this. And in this time, she met a guy. And it's a classical story. I won't bore you with it, but of course they fell in love. And she ended up never going back with this company because she married that guy, and then here I am in front of you because of that. And my mother, instead of becoming what she could have become in the world of dance, speaking in terms of kind of fame and profit and name and recognition, she became a mother, and she kind of now she doesn't really, in Mexico as an artist you don't really have many options. The government doesn't pay any attention to art or culture, and if you want to live there as an artist you really have to accept that you will live a very simple life. And this might sound like she kind of gave up the opportunity to become all that she could be in terms of dance, but it isn't, and she knew this very, very well. Because for her, dance was not something that would bring fame or profit or anything for that matter to her. Nothing. She was just doing it because she needed to do it, and this was her way. And this still is her, the only thing she can do, her love, her practice. So she has a school, or she had a school in Mexico, and she lives a very simple life, but she's still a dancer, and she's still extremely happy, and she's extremely talented, and not many people know about her anymore, but that's not what's important, and she knows that. And I think that's a different kind of mastery. And of course there are many stories also that go like this, but no one hears about them. So my first instinct about this story with Myosen was, in my opinion, actually wrong, because later on I read a little bit more carefully, and I realized that, well, it started to sound to me like Myosen was kind of pursuing name, pursuing success, and in the simple fact of going to China to follow the way, he was kind of forgetting a little bit about the way. What I mean with this is that it doesn't really matter what you do or where you do it, but it's more about the way you do it. And this is something I realized here in Antaiji. It's I remember a little bit before you guys came, I got ordained as a layperson, and I remember the team meeting previous to that day. I asked Docho-san, is there something I should know? Referring to something technical, like for the ceremony, chantings and stuff like that, but he just laughed and told me, oh well, the only thing you should know is why you are doing it. And I was like, okay, of course. But that got me thinking. And the reason why I'm doing is because of this. Because what I talk to you about now is, in my opinion, I don't know, this is very personal, of course you might not think this way, but in my opinion, Sazen and Zen manifest themselves in many, many different ways. For my mother, it was dance. It was sort of like as if, for her, dance is kind of her Buddha, and dancing is her zazen, her practice. She lives in this way. There's nothing else for her. She's like another version of Docho-san, but with dance instead of zen. That's how I like to look at it sometimes. And yes, so for me this lay ordination was kind of a reminder that well, yes, because it can manifest itself in many ways, but what I think is very interesting and beautiful is that Zen practice deals with the essence of everything. It's about our minds and our bodies, and it's their connection to everything, absolutely everything. And I think that's why it's so pure. It's kind of this thing I've been talking about, but in a purer state. And so for me, Tokudoshiki was a reminder of that all these things that I have learned here, and this way and this practice, is not something that will stay here when I leave Antaiji. It's something that will always be with me. And it's also a reminder that I'm not defined by the place where I come from or the people who gave birth to me.